Okay, I will get on and do the presentation. But before we all start, do be aware that this meeting is being recorded, and this recording will be posted up on the Sitemorse website for you to, for people who missed this, to go have a listen to it. So if you have any objection to being recorded or anything like that, then this is to leave. Also, in terms of questions, if you can put your questions in the chat if you want to put a question before I've finished, but at the end, we'll open up to chat, so so you can talk there. But hopefully I'll cover all the questions. Also got Martin on the call as well from Sitemorse, who can make sure that I don't miss anything out in terms of questions. Okay, so Sitemorse API. I'll kick off and get on with this one. So, what's the agenda? Those of you who have come to these Sitemorse presentations before know that I always put on beginning of my webinar, why should I care? Because if I can't explain to you why you should care about this, then why are we all even here? So, the Sitemorse API, what it essentially does is it gives you far more control over being able to do Sitemorse reports. So those of you who are existing Sitemorse clients will know the reports that we create, but of course what you see is what we've decided to put in the report and how it's laid out and so on. With the Sitemorse API, you can integrate that same testing with an application. But more than that, you've got full access to everything that we've tested, all the diagnostics, and then you can go off and integrate that with some application that you've got, or actually decide how you're going to present the data to whoever's going to use it. So you should care because it just gives you so much more control over any sort of Sitemorse testing. And during this presentation, I'm going to cover what is the Sitemorse API. And then basically, I'm just going to go through a few screens showing you sort of how you get started. So if as a result of this webinar, you think you want to have a go play with the Sitemorse API, here are the sort of things that you do in order to get yourself a successful test done, and then what you might want to do beyond that, because I have got 7 hours to take you through all the aspects of the Sitemorse API. So really, we're just covering a high-level summary at this point. Okay, so what is it? Basically, what it allows you to do is it allows you to submit a request to assess a number of pages from a public site, which is what you can do as a Sitemorse client already, but this allows you to do it from an application. Now, I should qualify what I'm about. Site there. It's basically a site that our Sitemorse servers can access. So strictly speaking, it doesn't have to be public. So for example, if you've whitelisted our IP addresses, then yep, that's fine. We'll be able to access it. But obviously we can only scan and test a website if we can actually get access to that website. And once we have finished making the assessment and all that's completed, then what we'll do is we'll post back to you some information about what we've done, where to get more details, and so on. I mean, the whole idea of that is you don't hang around just waiting and waiting for us to finish, constantly polling us, saying, are we there yet? Are we there yet? How many pages have you done? You just submit the request, and then we'll and permission to all of this, all of the API is controlled by a license key. Nothing unusual there. I assume that's already exactly what you all expected. So a little picture to show you how it works. And it's basically just show you the messages that get passed backwards and forwards in a very simple diagram. So on the left here, we've got you, that's the client, and your application or whatever it is you use to initiate the test, and also the callback server which is where we'll send the response to you once we're finished. In the middle, we have the Sitemorse servers and the Sitemorse API. And then on the right, the website being assessed. Now, if it's your own website, it would on the left of this diagram. But yeah, it can be anywhere. Anything that we can access, we can test. So it all starts off with your application sending an HTTP post to HTTPS post to us with your license key and some parameters in the JSON format. And those parameters tell us what we should be doing in the test, such as, for example, which website to test, how many pages to test, whether we should exclude certain parts of the website, whether we should only test particular things, how many yes to test, all that sort of stuff that you sometimes, as a Sitemorse client, you will hear us talk about when we say, oh, we'll just add some stuff to the advanced config. Well, here you've got control in effect over that advanced config because you can dictate to Sitemorse what the test will do and how it will run and so on. So once we've got that information, we send a response to you, which includes an ID about this test and also when what time we queued the test. Now, you might use that ID later on. It's one of the things we send back to you. But at that particular point, then it's all down to Sitemorse. So what we do is we go and we scan the website for however many pages you've asked us to do, whatever your configuration is. And of course, not only is it the start page or the pages that you've asked us to do, we grab all the other stuff, all the links, check all the accessibility, and so on and so on and so on, all the images. So depending on what you've asked for, that can take yeah, just a couple of minutes, or it can take several hours if you're trying to scan a very large site. But once we've finished, then we collect all the information together, and we will post back to your callback server. And we will post back there some information about the test, how long it took, and so on, what we found, some summary information. But also, one of the most important things we post back is a link for you to go get the full detail of all the diagnostics and all the information about the testing. And that's typically what you will do next is you will get the detail of this. You might do it from your callback server, you might do it from elsewhere. That's entirely up to you. And you download all the detail, and then you do something with it. And that's the whole idea of that. So instead of having a Sitemorse report that you access through a browser, you've got a load of JSON data with lots and lots of detail about what we've tested and what we have found. So essentially, that's the pretty picture version of how it works in quite a simple form. So what I'm going to go through now is basically those sub steps that you saw on the agenda slide. If you were putting one of these things together yourself to go have a test of it, here's more or less the steps that you go through. Obviously, you need this license key. So if you want one of those, then the process at the moment, if you want the test license key, then you can contact us at Sitemorse, and basically we'll just issue you with a test license key that looks a little bit like the thing that you see there. Don't bother taking screenshots and trying to use that in the Sitemorse API. A closer examination of that, you can quite obviously see it's a fake license key, but it does look a little bit like that. Okay, so once you've got your license key, then probably the next thing you need to do is set yourself up a callback server. So hopefully we've only got people who understand a bit of code on this call, developers. Hopefully we won't be giving anyone who is non-technical a nosebleed. But there we go. We've got a very simple callback server, probably the simplest one you can create. This example is in Node. And essentially, as you can see, all we're doing here is we are waiting for a message to turn up. And when that message turns up, we're just printing to the console the headers and the body. And the very bottom line, we just happen to be listening on port 8080. And that's it. You start yourself one of those up, and just make sure that Sitemorse can contact that. When I'm doing this sort of testing myself from home, obviously one of the things I need to be able to do is put a hole in the firewall on whatever port I'm listening on for the duration that Sitemorse is going to contact me. But there you go, very simple callback server. The other thing to bear in mind is, what if you decide not to have a callback server? What if you decide to just submit the request anyway and ignore the fact that we're going to tell you when it's finished? Well, if you don't do that, then you won't know when we've finished. The only way you'll know when we've finished is if you use that ID that we sent you back when you made the first request, and you keep pinging us to say, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? That is a waste of your time and a waste of our time as well. So the callback server is obviously the best solution. But imagine we can't talk to your callback server for whatever reason. You know, it's fallen over, or you forgot to start it up, or one of those things. Then we will keep retrying for 7 days. We'll try every few minutes for 7 days, and then we'll give up. But of course, during that time, it will start appearing on all of our queues internally in Sitemorse to say, yeah, we're trying, there's nothing there. And then someone will probably get upset. They'll probably contact me, and then I'll have to send you an email to say, where's your callback server gone? So please do put a callback server in there. Alternatively, what you could do is, one of the parameters that you can set when you do the initial request for the scan is the lifetime of this. So the lifetime basically says how long we hold the test information for. And if you set the lifetime to a low number, like 1, then we'll only hold it for a day, and we'll stop trying to contact your callback server much sooner. But anyway, there you go. That's what happens if you haven't got a callback server in place. So now let's assume you have got the callback server in place, and how do you initiate the test? This isn't all the code in the client. It is a very simple client. I've just divided it into 3 slides on here. Otherwise, the text would just be too small to read. But this is the first bit, and as you can see here, what we're doing is we're setting up the options for a post. We're using this URL, which is the URL that you submit requests to the Sitemorse API. And there's an authentication piece. The username's Dexter, and the password is that license key that we talked about earlier. In the next part of the options that we're posting on there, there's a body. And this is the interesting bit, because this is where you add any special configuration that you need to put in there. But as a bare minimum, you need to tell us the callback URL. As you can see, that's my little callback server sitting there on port 8080. And the lifetime, how long you want us to hold it for, how many pages you want us to test, and of course, the site that you want us to test. Now, there's hundreds of other parameters you might put in there, and all of that is documented in the Sitemorse API. But I just made this as simple as possible as a short working example on this. And the third slide of this is actually just the request. As you can see, this is all very simple code. And all we're doing here is we are sending the request, and then we're writing to the console what we get back from Sitemorse. So if we have a look at that, here's an example of this. So I've used Node on my test client, and what Sitemorse responds with is the ID, which is the ID you use if you've not got your callback server. So you can say, is it ready yet? And also the time at which it was queued. And that's all you get back when you initiate a test. Okay, so then it's just a matter of sitting back and waiting a few minutes. If it's only a few pages, so the 10 pages example here will only take a few minutes to do. If you are trying to do your whole site of 5,000 pages, that'll obviously take hours. And what happens? Well, when the test is finished, we talk to your callback server. And this is what we send to your callback server. This is divided into a couple of pages again, so you can actually read the text on there. So yeah, the most important thing of the information that we send back is that bit there that says detail with that long URL in. That long URL is where you will access all the detail of everything that we've tested with all the diagnostics and so on. We don't post that back to your callback server because it might be quite a large file, so we just post back a link to it. Also, don't bother to screenshot this and try and access that because that detail long URL is fake as well. But we'll also tell you when we finished, so you can find out the entire time because we've already told you when we initiated it, but that's when we finished. And then other bits and pieces that you would have put in there as well, like lifetime and pages. And further down, this JSON, it's about a page worth of JSON comes back if you actually display it on the browser. But there's start, finish times of the actual test, the pages that we tested, and the requested pages. Now, these two, pages and requested pages, that's interesting because, say, for example, you've got about 700 pages on your website, but you're not sure exactly how many. What you might do is request a 1,000-page test, and then, of course, we can say, yeah, you requested 1,000 pages. We found 747 of those. It's also what we'd use for billing as well. So we wouldn't charge you for the number of pages you requested. We'd charge you for the number of pages we actually tested. And again, the URL that we tested on the bottom. Essentially, that's it for your callback server. It's nice and easy, and you've got that detailed URL, so you've got all the information now, and you can go off and do something with it. And yeah, one of the things I often do when I get these back is I take that long URL and I literally just copy and paste it into a browser and have a look in a web browser at the sort of results that have come back. But how big is that file that comes back? Well, it depends a great deal on how many pages we've tested. So yeah, if it's just a few pages, then it's probably not going to be that large. But if you've tried to test your entire site of thousands of pages, that JSON file that comes back at the end of the detail URL could potentially be quite large. Particularly, it could often be sometimes tens of megabytes of data will come back. I mean, if I say test 10 pages, and those are the worst 10 pages you can find on the internet in terms of broken links and accessibility and diagnostics, then you obviously get far more data back than if you test 10 perfect pages. But yeah, one of the issues you might find if you're just doing quick tests on this and you put it into a browser is there's so much data there that Chrome crashes or more likely hangs. And that's what we found when we first started doing this. And so our IT director in Sitemorse, he wrote an extension to Chrome called JSON Wrangler, which is fantastic. It for handling and displaying huge amounts of JSON information, whether it's come from Sitemorse or anywhere else. So if you are interested in doing that, go look up JSON Wrangler as a Chrome extension. There's all sorts of lovely stuff in there as well. You can do control clicks and so on to expand and contract various sections of it as well. And on the right, there's just a little example of some of the stuff that comes back, but it can be considerably longer than that. So process the results, what you're going to do. There's all sorts of stuff you can do when you're processing the results. A few of them are listed there because you've literally got all the information about everything that we've done. Yeah, what's been tested, where are the broken links, are my pages accessible, spelling mistakes, how do I identify issues on the page, and so on. Am I going to go through each one of those individually? No, that is my 3-day presentation, and all of this is documented anyway. So if you go to sitemorse.com/API and scroll down to the bottom, you'll see there's a resources section, and one of them is using the JSON, which is pages and pages of stuff covering all of those things there, along with code examples. And even I think right down the bottom of that, there's some examples of using JSON ATA, if I've pronounced that correctly, JSON ATA, which is like a JSON query language to just pull out various bits and pieces of the JSON that's in there. So yeah, definitely worth having a look at that. And what if you don't want to write client code? Well, you probably do, but we've also got a command line version of this as well. You can go find that there on the Python project, Dexter CLI, go look for that, and you can then run it from the command line. And there's the usage on that. So, for example, you can pass your API key, and you can use, for example, one of the items at the bottom. So for those of you who didn't write a callback server and you want to know what you've got, or you want to know the status, yeah, you can put in your API key, and you can do list. That'll return all of those IDs of everything that we are running for you or have run for you. Then you can use one of those IDs along with your API key and do something like status, and then that will tell you, yeah, if you've requested 100 pages, it'll say, you know, we're doing page 57 at the moment. So that sort of thing. So yeah, that's quite useful if you've submitted something through code, but you just want a quick update. It's quite nice to use the command line version of that. But yeah, you're still expected to have a callback server. We don't really want you to just use the command line version and leave us hanging there for 7 days. So next steps and final slide for your homework. Yeah, go away to sitemorse.com/API and study all the chapters that are there. What is particularly interesting is all the various configuration options that you can give, including one of the very interesting things about using this API is during our tests, we run a simulated web browser, and you can even include a little bit of JavaScript that you can run in our web browser every time we access a page to create your own custom diagnostics that will appear in that big JSON file. So there's some really quite interesting stuff that you can add on there. There's, again, of course, all the configuration options and plenty of examples of those. So, for example, go find me a lot of PDFs, but only find me the first 10 PDFs in each directory, and that sort of stuff that you can do there. So after you've read all that and you're absolutely raring to go and you can't wait, what do you do next? Well, you contact Sitemorse, and we'll get you a test license key, and you can go away and have a little play with that. And if you decide you want to use it seriously, then we can discuss pricing and support options. So that was my last slide on there. What I am going to do is just look to see if we got any questions in the chat. I'm not seeing any questions yet, but if you feel free to unmute yourself if you'd rather ask your questions through the old fashioned method of audio.
Hi, Mike. This is Doug. I had a question. You were cutting out a little bit at the beginning, so I just want to make sure that I understood.
Yeah.
Exactly the connection part of it. So what are I guess, the access requirements that you would need to our CMS? How does that API connection work?
Well, basically, we just need to be able to, I tell you what, I'll just pop back to the diagram. What we need to be able to do is we need to be able to access it. So if I go back to this diagram here, the website being assessed, whatever that is, whatever it is being assessed, we just need to be able to access those URLs from Sitemorse.
So that would be like our public facing website. You wouldn't need access to
Typically,
like our authoring environment.
correct. Typically, it would be, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
If you, depending on what security you put in place and whitelisting or so on, you might be able to give us access to that, but you don't have to. Basically, what we're normally doing is testing your published content. We do have another thing called InCMS, which is actually a proxy which can live inside a content management system that does all sorts of interesting stuff, but that's not on this webinar. Basically, what we're doing here is typically what we do if we scan anyone's site, but we're allowing you to control it through an API. Sorry, did that answer your question, or was that a bit long?
Nope, that was great. That was perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, whilst I'm here, what I will actually do is I will just show you my site. And one of the things that I have access to in Sitemorse, if I select one that's done with Sitemorse 2, this is my test site. And here's an example of the JSON that would be returned if I'd done this through the API. And I think there's only about 50 or 60 pages on my website. But one of the things that you can see is there's an awful lot of information here. Now, I'm using JSON Wrangler as the Chrome plugin here because otherwise it would never load all of this stuff. And another thing that is really useful to do, which is a very much a contrast to the Sitemorse reports, is if you think about a typical Sitemorse report, they're all diagnostic centric, is what I call them, because if we test a URL and it's got it tests a page and it's got accessibility issues or broken links or whatever, that page ends up in the report because that's something you might want to go off and fix. If we test a page and it's perfect, there's nothing wrong with it, so we don't put it in the report. So often it's not easy from a Sitemorse report to see all the pages that were perfect. You only get to see the ones where there's an issue. But if you are getting all the JSON information back, you can actually see every single page that we tested here. And so, for example, if some of these pages were absolutely perfect, they'll be listed here, but they wouldn't necessarily be listed further down in the diagnostics. So if we go here are all the URLs that we tested in here. And this is JSON Wrangler. I've just used a control and click to contract all of these, but tell me how much there is in each one of them. And if we go right down, for example, to the bottom here and look at the diagnostics for some of these, you can see if I expand it out, we can see the diagnostics on there. Okay, have we got any more questions in there? No, I just thought I would very quickly show you some of those. And as you can appreciate, I've got quite a small test site here. If you are doing your entire website, this can turn into quite a large file. Okay, if we have no more questions, anything you want to say on this, Martin?
Nope, nothing further to add. Thanks very much for everyone's time today. Really appreciate it. And thanks, Mike.
Okay. And what I will actually do is hopefully you've been accessing this whilst we've been chatting, but sitemorse.api, and you go have a look at some of these things on here. Yeah, how to use the JSON, the thing I mentioned. These are the ones I put on the slide. And then you've got things such as, I scroll down a bit, what are the broken links? examples of JSON that comes back, and then little code snippets to pull out the information that you need, and so on here, for example. Okay. In that case, I've said all I wanted to say on that. If there anybody who's too embarrassed to ask a question at this point, you know how to contact us.